Well, yeah, here we are, guys. So the premise of the talk is the art of living, right? The how to what does it mean to live a good life? I think there's a lot of from the meditations that I've done. There's a lot of subjectivity to that. I guess it's kind of whatever is in a person's certain situation, what that means. But I think there's a certain essence of objectivity that we can probably get to, that we might be able to touch upon. But yeah, I guess just get right into it, man. Oliver, what's it mean to live a good life? Since you're the one that kind of came up with it, how would you describe what that means to you?
Oh man. Well, I guess just to give some context, like real quick, the reason I kind of suggested this topic is because in my experience in the last 7 or 8 years of my life, as I've been on this path, I've noticed that people are often concerned with being wealthy, being happy, being physically healthy, being famous, being popular. But nobody ever really thinks about the big picture, which to me is kind of like nobody's trying to live a good life, or nobody's thinking about like how can I make everything good, right? They're looking at one aspect of their life and they're thinking, how can I improve this, or how can I make this better? And so when I started getting into this stuff and studying Stoic philosophy and Taoism and all these things, what I realized is that these things were not religious, they were not philosophical, they were really about the art of living. These books or these philosophies were trying to instruct us or me into living a good life or cultivating a good life. And so this was a topic that I never considered in all my years on this earth until very recently. And I thought it was a helpful way to frame things like self-help, spirituality, the pursuit of happiness, and things of that nature. So that's really where my head started to go. In terms of what I define to be the good life, I mean, that's again very subjective. That's what I've also discovered in my meditations. I don't think there's an objective definition of the good life, although I think probably we can all agree on some basic things. But for me, it's inner peace is probably the biggest one, the absence of suffering. So instead of being quote unquote happy or experiencing pleasure all the time, I think for me, inner peace is the kind of the foundation of the good life. If you don't have inner peace, if you don't have freedom from inner turmoil, depression, suffering, anxiety, and all those things, it's going to be hard for you to enjoy life and to cultivate a good life. So maybe we'll start it there. And I'll just say, for me, the foundation of the good life is inner peace, the absence of suffering.
Oh, that's good, man.
What
Yeah.
about you
So,
guys?
yeah.
Okay. Well, I got a couple thoughts. I I remember reading like some quotes by Eckhart Tolle, and he was saying how if life is painful, or if you have anxiety and you have these struggles, pretty much then like you're doing it wrong in a way. Like he was saying, like life can be effortless, and that's a lot of what philosophies have said. And I was thinking about that, and I thought it's kind of, in my life at least, is kind of a not very productive belief, because then if I'm going through struggles, I start thinking, what am I doing wrong? Why do I have these struggles? Instead of like focusing on how these struggles can impact me in a positive way, which, if there's no struggles, then is there any growth is the other question. And I think that's the other thing, is like people think of these spiritual things as like you reach this state and then you're just, that's it for the rest of your life. Like these spiritual leaders have reached that whatever nirvana or something, and then that's it. Which I don't think that's a constructive belief either, because then like I want to grow until the day I die, and that's really what is most fulfilling in my life is growth. That's what I search for, and that's continuous. It's infinite, and yeah. I mean, I guess for me, the good life would be being able to look at myself yesterday or a year ago or 10 years ago and feel proud of the growth I've made.
Mm, that's good. So you say peace, you say growth. Where's the somewhere in the middle? Like, is there finding peace and growth? And is there a certain mindset of peace, knowing that you're on this journey, like on a path of bettering your being?
I think there is a state where you are just so like with deep meditation, if you can get very present, or just if you can get very present anyway, you can have such faith in the present moment that you don't have to worry about the future as much. So you don't have to worry about the anxieties. So you still have like these fears and stuff, but you accept them, you let them go, and you come back to the presence. And I think that's, the inner peace that's what I kind of equate to inner peace. And I think there are people that are really good at that, and I don't think I'm one of them. I think I worry about the future too much, and it takes me out of the present moment. But yeah, through meditation and other practices, you can get, I've touched it before with meditation, and it's hard to keep it up for some reason, but like get to a point where you have this anxiety of, oh shit, this is coming in the future. And then you say, oh, that's fine. It's okay. And then you come back to the present moment, and it doesn't weigh on you heavy.
Yeah.
But then other times where it comes up and I can't, like, even though maybe it's not consciously in my awareness, it's still subconsciously weighing me down with anxiety. And that's a tough thing to deal with. And it comes with more responsibilities too. Like the more people are relying on you and other things. But yeah, I mean, I think my goal, I guess, would be to just develop that. And I don't think there's an end goal to that either, that present moment, ness, or whatever you want to call it. Like you can always get more present, more accepting of the future, more accepting of anxieties and suffering. So I guess that's what I'm working on right now. What do you think, Rory?
Yeah. Good. Well put.
Definitely.
I think, at times it feels like all for myself, all I have is the future and the past, which definitely takes me out of the present. And it's just hard. It's hard for my mind to stay in the present. I'm always thinking of what happened in the past and what could happen in the future. And then I realized I'm living, and I'm not fully present, but somehow I got to, where I am today.
And I think I think for me, I can measure a fulfilling life in the amount of experiences I've had. And if you're in the future worrying about something that's coming or thinking about the past, you're not really experiencing life. You're actually avoiding life and evading it.
Yeah. Yeah. Easier said than done, right? It's a skill. I see that like being able to attune yourself to the moment, to the ever present moment seems to be like a skill. And it seems to be, if there is an end goal, the goal of this whole spiritual aspect, right? Just getting rid of all the yoga poses and the crystals and astrology, whatever you want to put on this whole new age movement, really getting down to it. The most basic goal of spiritual self-development is being able to shut off the monkey mind and come into the present moment and just enjoy life for what it is. All its beautiful moments, all its struggles, just simply experience life, right? To shut off like the worries and not even shut off, just kind of notice them and just watch them float downstream, to just be able to simply exist without worry, without anxiety, right? That seems to be, if there is a goal of a good life, the objective good life that all these spiritual masters, or just anybody really wants to attain, it's to just simply be at peace, man. Getting back to it, it's just to just not have to worry about the past or the future, right? Recognize it, accept it, know that it's there, but to really just be able to live this dream, live this experience that we're all living together, take it all in, It's tough. It's a skill, right? It seems like it should be the simplest thing. It is the simplest thing to do, to simply exist, right? But for some reason, it's hard. It's hard to continually dwell in that presence, but it's simple.
How do you go about reassuring yourself to stay in the moment? Like, do you kind of give yourself, do you talk to yourself and just kind of tell yourself, come back to the moment? Like what would be a good practice that you know of?
just simple meditation, man. It really is. It's really, it can't speak about it enough. Meditation, all kinds of various meditations. I practice yoga a lot. I guess creativity, being able to anything like you can, riding a dirt bike, whatever it is, something that just has you focus on whatever's going on, or maybe not focus, like, depending on which way you want to look at it. Something that will just be able to, for a few seconds, maybe just shut off the monkey mind. Something where, like, maybe writing, making music, playing an instrument, it's all on that same vibe, that same frequency, for me at least. Maybe it's gardening, something that is creative, like, or also meditation. They're in the same aspect. For me, creativity and meditation, they touch upon the same wavelength of just being able to disconnect from the drama of life and just kind of focus in. Like, I kind of reach like a flow state in a way. And I get the same thing when I go for a walk in the woods too. Like, just simply like sauntering out in the woods, just kind of being and taking it all in, it's different for everybody, but for me personally, meditation is a huge part of my life that allows me to reach a state of alignment and know what's real and know what's not, become the witness in a way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think everybody needs a toolkit,
Yeah. What's your toolkit, Oliver?
Well, I've got lots. I mean, again, like, I think everybody needs to develop their own toolkit, right?
Yeah.
But for me, like, just to answer your question, Rory, the quickest and most effective way to align yourself or be present, align yourself with the present moment, or become present, is through the breath. In my experience,
Definitely.
Anytime I want to be present, all I got to do is take some mindful, conscious breaths. 10 breaths, whatever it takes. And the mind immediately becomes quiet and I find myself in the present. So for that specific job, that's the tool for me. I also find that I always look at the clock at 11:11 and 1:11. And for that whole minute, I just am quiet. I meditate. So at least twice a day when I'm at work, I have these like moments where I'm just like, okay, I reset, I go back to the present moment, whatever's happening, at work doesn't matter. I take a little breather. So it's almost like an alarm clock for me to be present at those times. But again, I think everybody's got to develop their own methods. And, if you read a book like The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, for example, the entire book is this guy reminding himself of all of these things, to be present, to keep in mind that he's a mortal being, that he'll die someday soon, to be nice to other people, to be kind even to people who are dicks, to be grateful for life. He says, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to love, right? These are the things that he was constantly reminding himself of throughout his days. And he was the emperor of the Roman Empire. So, he needed that shit, right? Because he was living a messy, busy, hard life, right? Out fighting the German tribes, over the Rhine and all that stuff. So, I think that's what I've learned from these guys and from these books, is that you have to have a toolkit and you have to use it every day. And that's what the art of living is all about. You don't just go to church and then come out and then go about your merry way doing whatever you normally do. You have to make your entire life your religion, and you have to live it to the best of your abilities every day. Are you going to succeed? Not in my experience. You're going to fail lots. I do. But every day you have a goal in mind and you're trying to live it. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, I mean, you're going to notice improvements over time, guaranteed. There's no way you won't, as long as you stick to it.
Yeah. Well put, man.
I like what you said about you got to make your life your religion. And when we talk about, like, when people talk about religion, you always talk about faith. And I think, faith used to kind of scare me away, because I was like, I don't really want to have faith in stuff that especially stuff that comes from outward, But I think faith is hugely important. Like, being present in the moment, you have to have faith that being present is valuable, and I don't have to worry about the future. Because our mind, logically, we want to think out all these future scenarios so we can be prepared for them. And the faith of just like being present and just being okay with whatever comes in the future, something that's really hard to cultivate. But with meditation, the more you do it, the stronger it grows. And I think of the present moment, like I tell myself that if I want to imagine what God is, I should just make God, my God, the present moment and everything in the present moment. The more I am in touch with the present moment, the more I'm in touch with God or life or whatever you want to call it, experience. And the more that I am not in the present moment, the more the harder it is to really trust the present moment. Like the more I verge away from the present moment, the harder it is to trust it. The more I'm in present moment, the easier it is, the more faith I have in it. So I think about my life through the lens of a religion often. I think it's super valuable. I think people should create a religion that works for them. Or, I mean, if there's a religion out there that works for you, that's great too. But yeah.
Mm.
In order to know that a religion that's out there works for you, though, you have to investigate. You can't just adopt it or inherit it from your parents, right? So I think a lot of people out there are like, they think they found it, but they've never made any inquiry into it. They've never investigated any other religions. So how do you really know that it's the one for you, right? You have to work.
Right.
I think there's a lot of work involved in either creating your own or finding the one for you. So yeah, but I do agree with you completely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people get kind of fearful of religion based off of what they've learned and accumulated from their parents. But like you said, they don't really go out and investigate it for themselves. And if they did, maybe they'd find that it worked for them. Like you said, you gotta put effort in and really make it a practice.
Yeah, I used to be very against religion on all levels. I remember in college, I wrote a paper. It was in a religious class, and my paper was, how destructive religion has been. All the wars that it's caused and all this stuff. But it's not really fair to religion to say that's the religion's fault. Religion's a tool. How people use it, that's the result is based on that, not on the tool itself.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. All religions are pure in their, all the major ones at least are pure in their, in their essence, like what they actually are. It's just human beings twist them for control, Yeah,
they manipulate them into what they want them to be.
Yeah. But ultimately,
what's convenient?
What's convenient and what gains more power? It's a long story.
And what fits their view of the world, because they don't want to be challenged to change. I think a huge part of living a good life is being honest with ourselves. And I think it's incredibly hard because, our mind, our belief system can make anything true in our mind, like, oh, I'm going to drink this and in my mind it's going to be good for me, or I'm going to eat that and it's going to be good for me for these reasons, but to be truly honest with ourselves means we got to make a lot of sacrifices.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things in life that aren't aligned with our growth or our long-term development that we are addicted to in a way, that we rely on very heavily.
Right.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, you go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I was just going to say, say you want like some junk food or something and your mind won't quit on that, it really wants it. And you end up eating some, and it does kind of take care of it for a moment. It does kind of take care of the anxiety for a moment. Cause I've tried to go without eating certain foods and it's really difficult.
Yeah. I think in those moments when you it's really trading anxiety now for more anxiety in the future. It's the short-term relief and it's just procrastinating it really. Eventually these anxieties are going to have to be dealt with. And I think most people, especially when we're talking about, existential anxiety, death anxiety, anxiety of life and purpose, I think most people in the world try and push that off to the last moment. till when they're on their deathbed. And that is when I can't imagine how overwhelming and painful that must be to be hit with all of that in your last moments. I think one of the greatest tragedies of modern society is that we don't have ways, ritualized ways, or some type of way of confronting these anxieties, these existential things at a younger age, around like 18 or around then, when ancient societies you'd turn into a man. You'd go from this child dependent on everyone in a collective to this individual man, and you realize that you're alone in some ways. Obviously you are connected, but your own subjective experience, that is yours and only yours. And that's a terrifying thing to realize. But in these collective communities and ritualized ways of dealing with this, you realize, they're going through it too. So I'm alone in a way, but in another way, I'm not alone at all. Everyone's going through this. Everyone's has to deal with these things. And I think we can help, as a community, we can help each other better face our demons, our anxieties and stuff. And in our society, we just kind of ignore it. We hope that,
it'll work itself out.
Yeah.
Or they'll never die or whatever, right? They'll live forever.
Right.
Yeah,
that we're immortal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's two things there, Ryan, that I just wanted to plug in. The two things that you mentioned: honesty with yourself about who you really are, and honesty about your own mortality, facing up to your own death. Those are two, let's say, ingredients to inner peace. You cannot have consistent, sustained inner peace if, number one, you haven't addressed your own mortality, because that will eat up from the inside. It'll eat away at you. You'll be anxious. You won't know why, right? And then also, if you're not honest with yourself, if you don't know yourself, or if you're trying to be something you're not, or you're trying to mask certain things about yourself, that will also create anxiety and inner turmoil, even if you're not fully aware of it, or if you're not aware of the source. So I think that, again, those are two hugely important steps to cultivating inner peace. So I think it connects very well with kind of what I was saying at the beginning. Just wanted to note that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's recognizing the temporary nature of our reality, that all is temporary.
Indeed.
That's a tough pill to swallow for anyone that really doesn't know, that's caught in this ego game. It's tough to swallow that, but it's liberation. It's the truth. You can't go around it. Like you said, people push it away until their last moments and like, oh shit, I should have realized this sooner. But if you realize it, while you're still here and you have plenty of time left, it makes this life so much sweeter. Because in the best moments, I'm like, oh my God, this is a temporary moment. This is amazing. This is like a dream. Take this in, man. This is temporary, right? And then even in my worst moments, like, because I know that I'm probably gonna get sick or hurt, I'm gonna die someday, but it's all temporary. It doesn't matter. Like, it works either way. Like, recognizing the temporary nature of this reality, for me at least, gives me a sense of peace. And no matter what situation I'm in, peace to know that no matter what, like, if I'm having a good time, like, I'm going to a party tonight, you know what I mean? They got a band by the lake. I'm going to take it in. I'm going to say, this is amazing. This is a great moment in my life, but it's temporary. I'm not going to get too attached to it, but that's what makes it so much sweeter. That's what makes me realize, like, I'm living the good life. This is amazing. And also, like I said, in the bad moments, if I'm like sick in bed, I realize that my suffering is temporary. So that's for living the good life. For me, at least, it's kind of just seeing the nature of the truth and swallowing the red pill of that, all is temporary, man. But that's okay.
I think a lot of people like know that deep down. Like, I always knew that deep down, but like you were saying, until you bring it like to your conscious awareness and have dialogue about it, I feel like it can kind of, take over in a not so positive way. Like, for me, like when I, had used, drugs, because I wasn't able to even talk about it with anyone, because I didn't know how to talk about it with anyone. Because I feel like that's not something that we really talk about in this society. This culture is temporary. Life is temporary, and death is, everybody dies. And so, because I feel like because I wasn't able to talk about that, or at least bring it to my own, awareness, I kind of manifested it in drug use and abuse, and anything to not really put my best foot forward. And now that I've been off the drugs, I've been really trying to keep that on the forefront of my mind. Yeah. And it empowers me to kind of put my best foot forward, because life is temporary, but doesn't mean don't give it your all. Give it the best you can, which I think on some level we all are, but I think everybody can, maybe do a little better, myself absolutely included. And that's kind of what I've been working on.
I think there's two things I want to say. That knowing you're going to die and feeling the fear and the existential stuff is two different stories. Everyone knows they're going to die, but if you ask them if they're afraid, I bet most people would say no, and they would give you some justification for not. But that's because we've repressed it. We've repressed the feeling, not the knowledge, but the feeling of it. And if you truly allow yourself to feel it, it's so overwhelming that it's paralyzing. And I think a lot of people, Ernest Becker talks about it in his book, The Denial of Death. He says, if most people truly appreciated fully the feeling and the existential feeling of death, most people would be pushed to madness. And I really believe that. I think if you try and feel it on your own and go through it, it just kind of breaks you, because it's a paradox. But the other thing is you can't really understand the value of death, I don't think, at least in my opinion, until you start to feel it, because death is inherently valuable. And if you feel the opposite of that, like one psychedelic experience I had, I felt the infinity, like feeling like life is never ending. And that was more terrifying than anything I felt before. People think, oh, I want to live forever. But I don't think most people can really appreciate what that means and what that feels like. Like life is infinite. We are temporal, and I think that's a gift. I think that's the gift that nature has given us. But it's also the dilemma that nature has given us. That's the hardest thing to reconcile. And
that's good,
well
man.
Said. Yeah, well said. Yeah.
That's that perspective shift. It's just seeing in a new light. But that's liberation, right? In a way, isn't it? You feel
Absolutely.
Like freer. It's like weight off your shoulders, right? Because I know that feeling too, and it's been from psychedelic experiences as well. I feel like that's almost meditation, psychedelic experiences, whatever. It's kind of like a simulation where it shows you glimpses of death in a way, or glimpses of at least just like of the truth of what you're, all the bullshit that you've built up in your head. It kind of just like opens the floodgates to the truth, or it can, at least in the right circumstances.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I want to speak on that, because I recently, I've been off opiates for a little bit over a year now, but like a couple of weeks ago, I had a little relapse. It wasn't opiates. It was other hard drugs that I had found myself in a place where I used. And coming out of that, I was in California, coming back home, I felt more sober than I'd ever felt in my life, I just felt like very, I don't know. I felt kind of manic, honestly. Like I felt like I had this experience and it gave me a new perspective, but then it's like, oh shit, now I have to, deal with life again, because I'm going to continue to not use drugs, that's what I want. And just going through life, and it does feel kind of like a simulation, especially like the idea that like it kind of felt to the point where like everything we're going through has already been set up in some way, and it's just being played out in whatever way it's being played out. But it's like almost like being pulled by like strings, or like someone like behind the screen, or the show here, which is like a very terrifying thing to believe, because it feels as though there's no autonomy, or there's no free will, which I don't believe in. I think there is. And I think, coming out from that drug experience, and the longer I'm out of it, the more I realize like we do have power. We have the ability to, live this life the way that we want to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, a lot of things have been set up for us, right? So you do have a free will to some extent. You have the ability to make decisions in the moment, but the circumstances that you were born into, the society that you were born into, the economic circumstances, all that stuff was set up for you. So you're not wrong in that. You're just,
right.
It's not the whole truth.
Right. And like the family dynamics, like everybody has them, and that's just the way they are. There's almost no breaking them, because that's just how, like, we're habitual creatures. We live a certain way, and it's very hard to change that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the process, man. It's just building new habits, building new rituals for yourself. That's the whole spiritual process. I see it. We're creatures of habit. That's what a human being is. We do the same thing every day. And that's how you change your mind, is you change up what you do every day. And then years down the line, you're like, oh, wow, I'm a totally different person than I was 5 years ago. That's how I see it, at least.
Yeah. Patterns, breaking patterns and creating new patterns, right?
New paradigms, new patterns for yourself. Yeah. That's the whole aspect of growth.
It's easier to understand it, I think, in like group dynamics. Like one example that I use is like my wife and I used to have a pattern that we had established over years where I would do something that would piss her off. She would make a comment that would piss me off. Then I would escalate. She would escalate. I would escalate. And then we would end up being in like a blowout fight and probably wouldn't talk for a couple of days, or, give each other the cold shoulder. And one day this pattern began to unfold, but it was luckily after I had started to wake up a little bit from the dream within the dream. And what happened was remarkable. I didn't play my part in the pattern. I refused to do what I normally did. I did something completely different. I didn't react, I didn't up the ante. I was actually super kind. And I said, "Are you sure you mean that?" I didn't get angry, and it completely diffused the situation. And I can tell you with all honesty, that was the last major fight that we almost had. I mean, we haven't fought, and that was about 8 years ago. Because I broke the pattern, it allowed her to break the pattern on her end, and it changed our entire dynamic in those situations. So now when we get into those types of like tense moments, it doesn't unfold the way it used to, because we've created a new pattern, right?
Yeah.
And so that's with another human being. You can do that with yourself, because you have a relationship with yourself. And there are certain thoughts that you have. And when you hear those thoughts in your head, you react a certain way and you create that pattern. Yep. And then it unfolds. Do. So when you hear that thought the next time, if you do the opposite of what you normally do, or you do something completely different in response to it, instead of following the pattern, you will destroy that pattern. And you will start to create a new one. And the next time that thought comes in, respond differently again. Pattern can't establish itself. You can create a new pattern.
Yep.
And so I think ultimately that's what you're talking about. It's not like I decide to be different and I am different. Right. I wish it was that way. That would be so sexy. It's like, no, I have to fucking be in the trenches, and I have to make a conscious decision. Every time this situation arises, I have to become present, and I have to say, nope, I'm not following the old pattern. I'm doing something different. Yeah. And you might not know what the right move is. A lot of the times you don't, but you know what the old move was, and you know what the pattern is. So you just got to do something different from that. Anything. And then you'll figure out kind of what the best course of action is as you go, right? Yeah. But in my experience, you have to become aware of the patterns, and then you have to find ways to disrupt them and create new patterns. And it's not easy at all.
Definitely not easy. No. Doable. It's not easy. That's the power of meditation, though, because it allows you to witness the patterns. Just witnessing what's going on in your mind. You're like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. You just watch it. You're like, oh, that's a pattern. You might see like certain things in meditation pop up over multiple days. You're like, oh, that's a pattern. That's happened. And like that might be something I have to work on. So yeah, it's the whole package, man. It's the whole package of just reorienting yourself to a new paradigm. It seems to be, we're afraid to just let go of the pattern that we built up, that we've been conditioned into. Like there's something that we just identify with, and it's our ego. Our ego is essentially just our patterns that we built up, and we're just too afraid to let that go because we identify with the patterns. We identify with that lifestyle that we built up. What are you gonna say?
It feels familiar, I would say.
That's what it is, yeah.
And like to do something
easy.
Different. Yeah. To do something different would be facing a fear, because it's
uncertainty.
The uncertainty, unknown.
I think, I mean, ever since we are first born, we start developing those patterns or those filters of reality, and they become our reality. And until the day we die, we're building it up more and more. By the time we're like 20, in our mid 20s, though, it's pretty solidified, and it's represented in our brain as like the default mode network and neurological patterns. But the great thing about meditation and psychedelics is it can temporarily dissolve those filters.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it's temporary, it allows you to see them more honestly. And then after it, the hard work becomes, now I have a decision to make different choices. And over long periods of time, they can start to change. Like these neurological patterns in our head, they've been developed over hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of decisions. It's they're incredibly entrenched. So it's not like you can just like start thinking differently in a week and then your brain's different. It takes a long time. And that's why meditation, you got to be consistent about it. And,
Yeah.
It makes me want to like bring up just the topic of like addiction, because I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but some people will say, well, if you're an addict, you're always an addict. But I feel like addiction starts before drugs. Like, I don't think I think once you get into drugs, you use them habitually over time. That's an addiction. But I feel like the addiction to like escaping whatever it is that you're trying to escape in your mind starts before the drugs.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it starts in early childhood. And I think that's probably why people talk about trauma and addiction a lot, because if you have a trauma in early childhood, you start trying to escape it to cope. And maybe you start escaping it through food or sugar, or maybe it's video games. But then as it's repressed, it starts to fester, becomes more and more difficult to deal with. You have to enhance the coping mechanism. So you go to, your first drug, then your second drug, then you find the drug that is the most numbing. And that's where addiction.
I mean, especially when like you're in this day and age, you're given pharmaceuticals as a coping mechanism, and whether they work or not, they're a drug, right? And
and then
and they can be highly physically addictive too, like actual withdrawals. Like it's not only like a mental thing that you get yourself into. It's like literally, if you don't have these things that these companies are giving out, you could die, which is crazy.
Yeah, the issue of drugs is one that I'm very passionate about, because I think drugs can really be tools for positive, but the way that we have our perspective on them right now pretty much sets us up for failure. I think like pharmaceutical companies all drugs are designed to be taken every day. That's like what they want you to do because it's profitable. But if we changed our view to use drugs using drugs to better our sober mind, not as a like a crutch for our sober mind, not as like a way to rely on something else, but to better our sober mind. I think that's what psychedelics kind of showed me, is like that one experience. I don't need to go back to that, at least not constantly, but I can make decisions in my sober life right now that could better me. Whereas when I was on antidepressants and Adderall, it was like, I don't have to deal with my depression. I don't have to deal with my anxiety. I just take these things and they deal with it. They cover it up. They numb it. And that just, for me, it just exacerbated more and more, and to the point where I had to realize the depression is trying to show me something. And by numbing it, I'm not allowing it to do its work to teach me. And so I had to stop taking the antidepressants, which I did, and the Adderall after Psychedelic Experience. And I just felt it all. I felt all that shit that I've been burying, and it was terrifying and overwhelming. And I couldn't get out of bed, just feeling this anxiety for days. But after it felt so liberating, because it felt like this huge weight of all this anxiety that I'm burying and escaping. I'm just accumulating on top of me, and it's weighing me down. Right. And in order to shed that, it has to be felt. Like all feelings deserve to be felt and respected. And it's not like, I just want the happy feelings, and I don't want the fear and the anxiety and the pain. All feelings are valuable. I think one of the worst things about our society, or the hardest things, is that we value our thoughts over our feelings.
Yeah. Great line. Yeah, and I wanted to ask that because I have a theory about this whole good life, the art of living. What is the good life? Like, how do you measure or determine the quality of your life? Like, how would you even know if you had a good life?
Good
Right?
question.
What's the metric for you guys, in your opinions?
Guess how I'm feeling. Right?
Right? Boils down
Yeah.
to that, doesn't it? I mean, you could have $1
Mhm.
billion in the bank, you could have yachts, attractive women, fame, all that stuff. But if you hate yourself and you're depressed every day, do you have a good life?
Right. And then there
Right.
could be
I think so.
someone with very, very minimal lifestyle and just be much happier or much more content.
Yeah. I mean, there's actually studies that have shown a lot of people like in Africa, kids that have very little are happier than kids in America that have a lot.
Mm-hmm. My favorite study on that is lottery winners and quadriplegics. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
No.
They followed two groups, one group of lottery winners, one group of people who had recently become maybe paraplegics, quadriplegics or paraplegics. I can't remember. And they tracked them and they followed them for a year. And at the end of the year, guess where both groups ended up? Back to where they started.
Really?
What do you mean?
Same level of happiness. So when they won the lottery, the happiness level went pew. When they became paraplegics, the happiness went poo. A year later, both groups were right here. Back to baseline.
Yeah.
Hedonic adaptation. No matter what happens, we adapt to it over time. So if it's a bad, quote unquote, bad thing, like becoming a paraplegic, a year later, you're back to your normal baseline happiness. If it's winning the lottery, a year later, you're used to it. Now you've got millions in the bank. That's your normal. So you're not happy about it anymore. You're just baseline.
Yeah. It's all mindset, man. It really is.
That's super interesting.
So interesting. I was just about to say.
Yeah, look it up, man. It's a very interesting study.
So like with that in mind, what could I do now that would increase happiness later? It's not about really accumulating things. I guess it's like I was saying earlier, like for me, if I can, in a year from now, what will show me my happiness is if I can look back on myself now and be proud of where I've gone or where I've come, how far I've come. And I mean, that's not an objective measurement. It's subjective, but if you're honest with yourself, I mean, that's the key of honesty too, is like, if you're honest with yourself, you can tell. And maybe you're not happy with yourself, but that's just more motivation to kick it up next year, and
So it's like a long-term approach.
But what about right now, Ryan? You're saying, in the future, if you look back on yourself and see that you've made progress, you're going to feel good about yourself. But why don't you do that right now? And you look back now. Do you feel like you've made progress? Are you happy right now with where you're at?
Yeah, I am. And I don't think I do that enough. And so like before you were saying that, just like feeling myself this morning, I wouldn't say I felt particularly good about myself. But when I do, actually think back a year ago or 2 years ago, I'm proud of myself and that makes me happy or makes me feel good. But I think like you're saying, if you measured my happiness or whatever, that to where I was a year ago, it's probably the same, it's probably that adaptation that is the same. So it's not really about happiness. It's about fulfillment. And I'd say I'm more fulfilled than I was because I have more responsibility, I guess. I used to, I don't know if it's about responsibility as much as, but I used to really not want responsibility. I thought it was limits to my freedom to have these responsibilities, because then I can't do things just willy nilly. And one thing I was talking to Rory the other day about is like freedom is a bit of a paradox as well, because a lot of times like having a routine and being locked into doing a certain thing, you actually are more free, at least in your experience. Even though if I was just to wake up every morning and just do whatever came up, I would be a slave to my impulses. You know what I mean? Like whatever I wanted to do, if I wanted to, go have a drink at 9 a.m. and that came up, I'd go do that. I'm just a slave to whatever comes up in my impulses, in my monkey mind. Whereas if I have a routine,
then you can have some inner peace.
You can have some inner peace because my mind doesn't need to plan out the future. It knows what it's going to do. All I have to do is experience the present moment and just stay present and go through it and feel it, experience.
Go with the flow, right?
Yeah, and if those impulses come up, you have a reason not to indulge in them because you have something going on. You have to go here at this time. You have this to do, so you can't go drinking at 9 a.m. because you got work, you got this, you got that, right? So it almost like eliminates those impulses or makes them irrelevant, because it doesn't matter what your monkey mind wants. You've got a routine, you've got duties and commitments and responsibilities, as you say, and those things take precedent.
And that gives you a peace of mind, right? Like when you're doing that work, that responsibility, your mind doesn't wander to, oh, can I take this? Can I take that? Or, what can I do to escape? It's more, you just come to some inner peace, right?
Yeah. Accept the moment and find the value in the present moment you don't want to escape at that point.
It's like getting more into it, chopping wood and carrying water.
Yeah.
That's the ironic thing is like once you admit that we're not free, because we're not actually free in this material body, you can reach a sense of freedom going with the dance of this life, going with the flow, going with this groove. There's freedom in that, because we're not free if we're in this body. Like I can't just do whatever I want. Like real freedom, right? In its I guess in its definition is being able to do whatever you want, kind of like a dream state, right? We're not actually at that point. But I think true freedom is reached mentally is when you admit that we are just a servant to this crazy reality that we live in. And then through serving, through doing whatever you have to do, going with the flow, whatever the path that you decide for yourself is, there is a sense of peace and freedom that you reach within. It's like getting more into the life of non-freedom actually makes you internally free,
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's the paradox of duality, really, is that we are these, infinite sources, limitless source trapped in a limited body.
Yeah.
And that's what's very hard for children to reconcile. And that happens around like the ages of 5 and 6, when a lot of children are having really terrifying nightmares and traumas, wetting the bed. And Ernest Becker actually says that wetting the bed is a denial of our dualistic bodies. Like you want to be free and you're doing these things trying to be free, I guess, but you can't escape your fate. I mean, people that try to escape that limited in reality end up in schizophrenic states or mental illnesses. Like schizophrenia, he talks about as inability to limit reality. Like you have all these possibilities going on all the time in your mind. You're living in these infinite realities, but you're not actually living at all, because those aren't real. The only real thing is this limited perspective of reality that we see and we can experience through our bodies.
Yeah.
He also talks about depression as when we limit ourselves too much. Like you have to limit reality in some way. Like if you limit it too much, you get trapped in just patterns of cycles of not really going anywhere.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's
yeah,
finding
find
the
balance.
happy medium. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Gotta have grounding. Just grounding. That's what it's about. Knowing what we are, knowing what it means to be human. Like you said, knowing the limitlessness of what we truly are, but also playing the act of the human being, the servant that we are. Yeah, man.
The whole world's a stage, right?
Honestly, I've been thinking about that lately. Yeah, man. I think this life is just a giant show. This life is just like, we're just here to serve some greater purpose. I don't know, like what we're collectively doing as a species on this earth, but it seems like we're building something. I don't know. Yeah, like what are we doing here? Is this just a giant show?
It's just one big theatrical play.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Or a great dance or a musical performance, the never ending.
So.
It's creation.
One thing that I thought was pretty empowering when I had that psychedelic experience, Ryan was there and he said, think of our ancestors and like the sacrifices that they've made for us to be here today. Like they had to blood, sweat, and tears at least blood and sweat. I don't know how much tears they really let out, because you think of them as like warriors, but
yeah, they were facing death every day.
Yeah. Like our hunter-gatherer ancestors, like we're talking like what it really means to be a human, like where we came from, our origin.
Yeah. I think it's really important to remind ourselves of like, imagine ourselves as those first humans, or just imagine those first humans,
I wouldn't make it.
I don't think any of us would.
We're too soft.
Yeah. And that's why gratitude goes a long way in terms of living the good life too. It's like, be grateful for this. We're living like kings, yet we find ourselves unhappy. I have an unlimited amount of water that I can drink, clean water. I can just put my head underneath and drink it. Like that's a luxury to people in the hunter-gatherer times, right?
Oh, yeah.
I never have to worry about a meal. I've never had to miss a meal. Like my life is actually in the material plane very, very good. And so it is for millions of other people out there as well. But yet we always find something to just think, oh, it's not good enough. Like, oh, my food wasn't warm enough,
Yeah, maybe it's like the mundaneness of the society. We can pretty much, like you were saying earlier, we can't do whatever we want because we're in this limited body, but we can do anything that anybody else can do.
Exactly.
I think that's a really tough thing for like teenagers becoming adults in our society is it's like, what do you want to do? Well, and it's like infinite possibilities, and I got to choose one thing. And
you're also told as a kid that like you can't have everything you want, and then you grow up and it's like it's almost like I want whatever I can't have, and then you grow up and you're like you can have anything you want, and it's like where's the challenge, like the kid like challenge, you know what I mean?
Yeah, hunter gatherers, they didn't have to worry about what am I going to become when I get older.
Right?
I'm gonna be a hunter.
Yeah. Probably
hunter or gatherer.
Hunter, gatherer, shaman. That's it. Those are your options.
Yeah, I think they were definitely more in the flow too. They weren't worrying about the future like we were. They were experiencing the present moment.
Do you think they were happier? Like if we could say happier or more at peace, even though they had the face, they get a splinter, they might die or something like that. Were they more at peace, you think? Even if they lived a short life with a lot of strife and turmoil and disease, whatever it is, do you think in that life that they lived, were they more present? I would say yes. I would say they were more in that present moment. Even though it probably was a lot worse off than we could ever imagine, they were probably just in an enlightened state almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because they didn't know any better. Yeah. That's just what they were in. I think
you also talk about like a big factor of like having a good life is having meaning, like meaningful. And like they knew that like if they didn't catch that deer or whatever, their tribe's going to die. And they might think they're the only, humans around. That's significant. Even if you go back like 300-400 years ago, Native American Indians, when the Europeans came over, the war was a huge thing in Native American tribes. They would war each other. Now imagine this foreign European white folk coming over, trying to destroy, like taking our land from us. And they have these guns, that technology we've never seen. It must be like the most unbelievable thing. Mm-hmm. And they have, tomahawks and bow and arrows that they've been using for thousands of years. Those warriors going into battle must have been like, this is the ultimate meaning, Yeah. And they're doing it like, I can't imagine a more like a better way to die in a way than that.
I've heard someone on that note, I listened to something the other day that said there's been people that have been in battle, like soldiers in battle, and they proclaim that they're God. I listened to somebody that said that the other day, and they have this like almost like a psychedelic experience while they're in battle. It almost brings them to that sense of presence. No, like just just seeing just everything. Like, I don't know if it's the adrenaline rush, but just kind of like that, like you said, I guess a greater purpose. And in that state of extreme survival, whatever battle it is, whatever war it was, they probably feel that. They probably feel that they just, I guess, surrender to what it is. And surrender in the moment with the tomahawk and the bow and arrow. And you hear these, like, imagine what a gun sounds like too. I mean, if you've never heard a gun before and you have like hundreds of guns lined up, and it's just like, oh, right. So picture, you don't know what a gun is, right? I'm kind of going off a little bit here. You don't know what a gun is. All you know is bows, arrows, and tomahawks. And then you see these guys that are light skinned, dressed up, looking funny, and they have these things and they're lined up, and it makes this enormously loud noise you never heard before. Then all of a sudden, one of your boys has a hole in his chest and he's bleeding out. You'd be like, what is that, bro? Like, what does that do to your mind if you don't know what that is? It probably brings you to a state of, like you said, just complete like survival purpose. Like you are completely embedded in this moment of in this warfare that you've gotten yourself into. And
I think those states are psychedelic. Like, I think it really is truly psychedelic when something, it completely breaks your view of the world. Your view of the world is a certain way, and these things come out. And I think you can touch on this a little bit if you've ever been traveling to a very different place. That culture shock is psychedelic because it breaks all of your preconceived notions of reality in a way. Like,
that's what it's about.
And
dissolving boundaries. That's what Terrence McKenna said. They're just about dissolving boundaries. It's just about getting rid of the bullshit, the facade that we've built up, the story, the narrative that we have in our head of who we think we are, and then just giving you the truth right in your face, showing you that you're not who you think you are. This is the truth. And this, that's kind of what we need, because those boundaries we build up are walls that are very hard to break down, right? And sometimes you need very, very intense experiences in order to do that, I believe. And that's the power of psychedelics.
Yeah, I was just gonna
we're talking about.
I was gonna say, I think that's like one of the most valuable lessons you can get from the psychedelics. But I don't. But it's not as simple as to just say it. I mean, experiencing it is really, the essence of that.
Yeah, you can't put words on it.
Yeah.
But that's the essence. Yeah, that's the description of kind of what these things are about if used correctly, which can seem a little intimidating, but it's what we got to do to grow, man. It's what we have to do to further our beings and to get rid of the conditions that we've been programmed into, essentially.
Yeah. Open our horizons.
Yeah.
Yeah. New perspectives, right?
Yeah. New perspectives, the most valuable thing we can be given, I think.
You guys think there is a path to live? Like, so we all have our subjective ways of living this good life, but do you think there is the Tao, right? I think there is something that we can all live according in our own way, no matter what it is, whether it's somebody paints a picture or somebody has a family or doesn't have a family, or, insert certain situation here. I think that no matter what the situation is, I think there's a certain kind of thing that you can tune into, a certain frequency that we can all tune into. Like, do you believe that's a thing? Like a certain kind of lifestyle of betterment, of growth, of, I think something that we can touch upon.
Yeah, I think how we there is something underlying it all. How we interpret it is subjective. And that's like our job, is to interpret it and then create it in our lives. Mm-hmm. But I think, the way we interpret it is going to be different for everyone, but we're all drawn on that same source.
Yeah. And once you know.
Yeah. Well, I think there's certain principles or certain, I guess you could say propositions that I think most people can agree on, like impermanence, for example. Like, we can all kind of agree, even if we don't fully embrace it on a day-to-day basis, we can all agree that things are always changing. Nothing lasts forever. And if you get scientific about it, even things that appear to be static are in constant movement. They're dynamic, they're energetic. So there are certain essential truths, I think, that you can find in all the spiritual paths. Science is now starting to also say, hey, actually, this is the underlying nature of reality. So, I think in that regard, if we can all kind of come to these principles and these premises, and we can all agree on them, then from these, I think we can develop what you're describing, ways of living in the world while recognizing the true nature of the world, right? The impermanent nature of it, the fact that duality is an illusion, right? Like we've been talking about the art of living. And one thing that I noticed is that we spent a lot of time talking about dying. And life and death are viewed as opposites in Western society, but they are actually complementary, right? Like these guys up here somewhere, you know, the white and the black, they complete each other. You can't actually have life without death. That is a prerequisite of life. If you are alive, then you've signed the contract that says, by the way, you're going to die one day. That's part of life. That's part of life's contract. And so in a sense, these two things are completely intertwined. Can't have one without the other. And so, yeah, I think there, again, if you can come to these truths or these principles, then yeah, from there you can develop your own way, your own strategy, your own path of dealing and aligning yourself with these truths. But the first thing you have to do is come to these truths, and you have to acknowledge them and experience their truth. Because thinking about them, thinking everything is impermanent is not the same as experiencing the truth of your own death. Is, you know, the fact that it's coming and that you can feel it, and you're like, one day this experience is going to stop. That's very different, right? So yeah, it comes down to facing those truths, and then yeah, maybe there is a way to come up with a path or a system of being in it effectively, right? Because right now we're in it, but I don't think we're effective in it because we don't face up to the reality of it.
Yeah.
I think what you said about the illusion of duality is something that I don't think people understand well enough. Like, we view the world as good and bad, and we look at bad things like, oh, whatever it is, you know, addiction, that's bad. But if you view everything as valuable, not good or bad, it just is, and it has a lesson to learn, then you can make best decisions going forward. If you dwell on something that's bad, then you doesn't allow yourself to get over it. You get hung up on it and you repeat it. And I think just viewing things as not good or bad, not black or white, just they are, and there's a lesson in them. And also, like, if you view the world as like a great show or a dance or a song, it's not like there's a bad note there and a good note there. It's just all part of it.
One ensemble.
Yeah, just all one great big ensemble.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Rory, you mind if I ask you, and we can cut this out obviously, but what was the substance?
The drug?
Yeah. Just out of curiosity. You don't have to share it.
And no, I will. I'm glad to. I mean, I say relapse. To me, my drug of choice for 10 years was opiates and heroin, and I have not gone back to that, you know, in over a year. When I was in California, I smoked meth for the first time. I found myself, I was just, yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to try it, and I did it. And then I kind of habitually did it a few more times and ended up not sleeping for like 4 days. So, and I was having like pretty bad auditory and visual hallucinations. Or not bad. They weren't good or bad. Honestly, They weren't. They just were. They felt very real.
Right.
I couldn't tell the difference between what I could really hear and what this auditory hallucination was. It sounded just as real as everything else I've ever heard in my life. So that was real scary. And I don't know if it was just something I needed to do to get through an experience on my own, you know, but yeah, so I'd never done that before, and I turned it from 0 to 1,000% in my and got through it, and here I am.
Well, following your brother's wisdom, you know, as of not viewing events as either good or bad, and just viewing them as just being, and then also what did you get from it, and like what did you walk away from? What did you walk away with after that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I mean, it gave me, some type of perspective. It made me realize that like it doesn't matter what the substance is, it's not going to give me what I'm looking for. Um, and I guess I knew that on some level through my, story with heroin, and how I realized that's never going to give me what I wanted. I thought maybe something new. Let's try it. I've never been around it before. See what it can provide. And I just realized that like I knew it on some level, but I just had to prove it to myself that there's really no substance that's going to give me what I'm looking for, because at some point in life, you're gonna have to wake up, unless you die from a drug overdose, which would be tragic. And that's not what I don't think what anyone wants in reality. You're gonna have to face whatever it is you're trying to escape. And I just had to kind of experience it and go through that. I don't know why self-sabotage or what I did, like putting myself through that, but I did. And so I guess like the ultimate lesson is like, yeah, there's really no substance on earth that's going to give you exactly what you need, except food and water for sustenance. And
I think what I learned from it is that the way we use substances, there's kind of like two ways to use substances: either to escape life more, or to go deeper into life, to
enhance life.
Yeah. And you were using those to escape the anxiety, because you had a lot of anxiety going down there and some other stuff that happened, and it just enhanced the anxiety 1,000-fold, to a point where your coping mechanisms just completely dissolved, completely shut down, and you're left to your own devices, unable to cope, and it ends up in paranoid delusions and psychosis.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to tell like your other, like your story for you, but a big theme of that was death as well. The feeling like you're gonna die. Like you said, you felt like that for over like hours.
Oh yeah, I felt like I was going to die, that I wouldn't escape what I was going through for like 4 days. I mean, I was totally convinced of it. I remember having hallucinatory state where, I was preparing myself to, because I thought there was no escaping. I thought I was gonna get killed. Kind of scary and threw me for a loop, but something that I guess I just had to experience.
But I see that. I think what you're getting at there is what we were talking about. Understanding and feeling our mortality. But there's a right, I guess, a
right way to do it and a wrong way to do it.
I guess so.
Absolutely.
Kind of. Maybe there's not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's all just whatever. But like, there's a way to do it where it's not as
destructive or just
anxiety inducing. Rory, you said something twice, and I think it relates directly to the topic of this podcast. You said, I realized that no matter the substance, it wasn't going to give me what I'm looking for. What are you looking for, my brother?
That's a great question. I mean, honestly, I don't really know what I'm looking for. I think I did want to experience death in some way, and I wasn't really able to. And part of what Ryan and I have been doing is, weekly inducing ourselves into a kind of a hallucinatory state. Not really. It's with cannabis, so it's not with, classic psychedelics. But that definitely brings on a feeling of death, and if we want it to, if that's what the intention is. And I guess I'm just looking for, I don't know, some type of surrender. I'm trying to surrender to life, and I'm not really seem to have been going about it the right way for the past 10 years. And so it's like we were talking about earlier, it's growth. It's, every day you get a little closer to, and I really, like I said, like substances really aren't going to get me there. If I really want to experience life and death, I have to do it, sober. And that's scary for someone who's been on drugs for so long, but I've seen this past year, it's well worth it.
Yeah. Hey, it's a process, man.
Absolutely.
It's all a process. You had 10 years you were hooked, right, man? Like we talked about before, if you have rituals and we have these patterns, 10 years is a long time to decondition yourself from. So I wouldn't feel bad about it, you know? You went through it, you're here now, you're alive, learn from it and move on. That's all you can do. Get back on the saddle and just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love drugs, so I can't critique you at all. I mean, you had an opportunity to try something, you tried it, didn't obviously sit well with you. Now you know meth isn't the one, or it's not even, it's not one that you want to try again, right?
Yeah.
Personally, like I have the same view of drugs as I do of religion. And Ryan, you nailed it. It's a tool. You can't blame drugs any more than you can blame religion. It's people doing things in the name of religion. It's people using drugs certain ways, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I personally I have no judgment towards anybody, because if I did, I'd be a huge hypocrite. I mean, I'm drinking coffee. I consume cannabis. I've been on some other psychedelic journeys over the last year using psilocybin and MDMA in combination in group settings, doing all kinds of rituals and stuff. So, you know, you got to find the substances / activities that work well with you, that enhance your life instead of repressing it. Like, again, what you were saying, Ryan, you know, you can use these substances to repress things. You can use them to enhance things. It's finding the right mix, the right balance for yourself. And if the right mix and right balance for you is absolutely nothing, complete sobriety, then right on, brother. That you're going to get high off sobriety. I guarantee you that, brother.
I was just about to say, I've realized, you know, the states that I got in when I was using opiates in the past, I've actually been able to get into the same state sober, like with meditation or just kind of sitting there and feeling things. Like, yeah, the drugs are super powerful, but humans are almost more powerful. Like, we can really get ourselves to feel, you know, or not feel in our own way. And I don't know. For me, I think certain drugs just aren't going to get me there.
Yeah, totally. They're not enhancing anything. They're just getting in the way, or they're making things worse or whatever, right? Yeah. I mean, last time I talked to Gary, we brought you guys up because, you know, we were having a conversation about cannabis. Gary, your cruel mistress, as you call her. Yep. Sometimes you can chill on the couch and other times you can have anxiety attacks about your own mortality. Yep. And then, we brought you guys up because I was like, the way those guys do it, right? Once a week in a ritualized fashion, that obviously seems to be working.
Different way to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's probably more associated to how it should be done. I mean, I'm not saying should or should. We all do it in our own way, but if using it as a tool, that's probably the most effective way. But I'm not speaking from, I smoke it every day. I'm not speaking from my personal experience, also. You know.
I think it depends on the person and the individual. Like just what we found for ourselves, I'll speak for myself. Doing it once a week was structured and it gave me what I needed.
Yeah. I think we talk about, you know, dissolving these filters or these boundaries, new perspective. When I'm up there, it really like forces me to confront these anxieties and fears that in my normal life, I'm not really allowing myself to feel fully. And I think that's good. You don't want to feel your mortality all the time when you're at work, just like freaking out that you're going to die. So there should be.
I felt that before at work, though.
Don't you work with young kids, Ryan? That would be really bad for you.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
You're all going to die, kids.
But I think that's the importance of rituals. You know, design a space, a setting, in order to get into these things in a safe manner. And I think like what you're doing down there in California, Roars, you're trying to get at that, but that's not the setting really. You want to be a setting that's safe and you're with other people that you can really trust and get intimate with. And,
for sure.
Yeah.
That would be much more of a productive way to go about it. And I realized that when I was there, I was like, if I could, I don't know, I was just like, I'm definitely not in the right setting. And I got myself into smoking the meth before I realized, I knew on some level I was in the right setting, but it's just, I didn't really realize it until I did the drugs. And I was like, oh, fuck, this isn't giving me what I wanted or what I needed. And now I'm here and now I'm thousands of miles away from home.
You just got to get
all of my, like you said, all of my defensive egoic boundaries or whatever were kind of shed, and I was just kind of out there. I was like, I don't know what to do now. So don't get yourself in that position.
It's a learning experience.
Setting, absolutely. And doing it in the right company is huge. Like I remember doing, when I was a teenager, doing like mushroom trips with strangers and not having a good time at all. And I learned very quickly, it's like at home, close friends, or, you know, in a comfortable place, close friends, never out in public, never out with strangers. Cause that'll fuck you right up.
For real.
I try and think a lot about how ancient people use drugs too. Like, I mean, maybe at first when humans first discovered psilocybin mushrooms in like the dung piles of Africa, they started eating them. But I think they learned pretty quickly that they won't want to be fucked up on psychedelics all the time. So they probably developed some structure of like, I don't know, this is pure speculation, but like once every full moon, the whole tribe gets together, they take them, they dance, they have a great experience, they get more connected, more social cohesion, start communicating more.
9 months later, you got a bunch of new babies coming out.
And then you're like developing plans to like take over the Neanderthals, you know?
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with you, man. There's no way they could have been needed every day. Sorry, Gary.
I think religion and the religions that we have and psychedelics go hand in hand with the rituals that they use them with, you know? All of these religions kind of most likely had psychedelic use implant in them, you know? Like I think sacraments, you know, the holy sacrament, the flesh of Christ was probably a mushroom, most likely. Like all of these rituals that we have around, like, you know, going to church or you know, going to a mosque or something, most likely had some kind of ritualistic aspect of them from some kind of plant medicine. If I had to guess, like if this was a roulette table and I had to bet, all right, did they use psychedelics back then or not? I would bet yes, they definitely did use them in a ritual form, and thus it created the basis of religion that we see nowadays.
100%. Yeah. And if they didn't, and if it wasn't a mushroom, it should be now. Like if, you know, if the original sacrament wasn't a mushroom, let's make that a reality now, because I'm telling you, there would be some serious spiritual breakthroughs in churches and mosques and temples.
Happening. It's happening.
It fucking should. It would be amazing. You want to talk about God? Forget talking about God. You want to experience God? Yeah. Let's fucking get real here, guys. Let's get in a cathedral, drop some mushrooms or some acid, and meditate until we become God, because it'll happen. Give it 45 minutes. We're all going to be kumbaya pretty soon.
That's heavy.
I'm telling you.
That's a Good Friday experiment. That's what Timothy Leary did at Harvard.
That would be, but I mean, like, let's take the experiment and let's broaden it out, because I think, you know, I'd love to have a church where psychedelics is on the table, not mandatory, because it should be freedom. But like, if you guys want to show up, this is the special Sunday service where we become one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would love to experience that, because that would be wild. Just in small settings, doing it with just my wife, you know, man, I have gotten high, and I don't mean high on drugs. I mean like fucking high.
That is your church, man.
It is, yeah.
That's all you need. You don't need
absolutely.
You don't need a.
But I want to do it with you guys.
I want to do it with
everybody.
Sure. I'll go get some. Let's all do it right now. Let's get into it.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, like the psychedelic experience is really what got me out of or really catalyzed me to, or just gave me the perspective on the drugs for the past 10 years and got me closer to that feeling of unity. Mm-hmm. And then I came out of it and I was like, there's no escape. Yeah, it's really what transpired me to get off of the heroin and the methadone, all of that stuff. And
I just want to say, I think a flaw that people make when they look at the history of religion is they look like 2,000 years ago to like the start of Christianity, or 3,000 years ago. But religion probably started hundreds of thousands of years ago, well before there was any documentation of it. Yep. And even if Christianity wasn't using, you know, mushrooms, they could be not. That ritual is most likely passed down from a mushroom ritual of 100,000 years ago, and they're just doing the form of it now. Exactly. Like ritual, Joseph Campbell talks about rituals now have become like merely form. Like they're not actually, rituals are supposed to produce a literal change in your being. Like you go into it and you come out a different person, you know, and now they're just kind of this show, you know, and it's not, exactly. I don't know why Our camera got blurry, but
Yeah, people go through the forms, but they don't understand the meaning or the significance of the forms, what they relate to. Yeah,
like it's supposed to be an actual experience of, you know, feeling that, and not just like,
totally. Yeah.
I've only went to church twice in my life, and then it was actually like 2 Christmas Eves ago, and I went and they handed me the body of Christ, and I was like, there was something in me that said this was probably some kind of psychedelic. in a previous life, through this whole ritual that I just witnessed and this whole sermon that I heard from this guy, if I went into this and the priest handed me a mushroom or a tab of LSD, in that moment I would say, yes, this is exactly what I'm supposed to take in this moment after what I just went through. So most likely, yes, the body of Christ, the flesh of Christ was probably, it's bread, right? It was probably some kind of like LSA element, you know, because it's something like that. Yeah, man. And it was probably, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and when you think about the influence that psychedelics have on culture today, like modern day, it's not like that's going to be a new thing. I mean, the culture that is first created by humans 10,000, 20,000 years ago would be influenced by that same thing. These cultural, like, you don't develop culture really just, I think like these psychedelic experiences propel culture on a new level, you know, and like, I don't know. I think the connection between culture and psychedelics, people think of it as like a modern thing, like, in the 1950s had a huge influence on this song or whatever, but it's like, let's broaden our scope, you know. 150,000 years ago, the mushrooms they did back then, they have effects on our culture that we could never even understand. The complexity is way too complex.
Yeah, we're disconnected from that. I mean, we're slowly gaining that connection back. That's what always interests me too. Is like, how are these going to be incorporated now that we know and the cat's out of the bag and we're moving towards some kind of form of decriminalization or legalization? Where are we going to go from here? Like, how is this actually going to be in our society? Because there's no going back now. Like, you know, Oregon just decriminalized and legalized psilocybin therapy. There's plenty of ayahuasca retreats all over the world, psilocybin retreats. Like, we're there, it's actually in our society now. It's just the beginning, but it's just becoming a part, an alternative medicine that we can approach. So it seems to me like it's becoming like a therapy session, like it's just an extension of therapy, right?
Yeah.
Before it was a ritualistic religion, you know, part of like some kind of rites, like a rite of passage almost, or like a celebration in a way, like maybe something in the stars. But now it seems like it's actually being implemented as a way to like actually seriously heal ourselves. Like we're seeing the power, the true power, the transformative effects of it. And it seems like we're actually making it into our healthcare system in a way. It's really interesting.
Yeah. I think that's really cool too. And I think it's a good start, but really like democratizing these things for anyone to use in their way. Like, even if it's, you know, a group in the woods that wants to try and develop their own culture, you know, that everyone should have that right.
Seriously.
There needs to be education around it, though, obviously, right? I mean, if you're going to democratize it, you got to make sure that people know what they're getting into and they know the, you know, whatever potential risks. I mean, my understanding is psilocybin is the safest substance to ingest out of all the drugs out there in terms of its physiological effects on you. It actually has regenerative properties on the brain, right? It causes neurogenesis, so it causes new brain cells to, you know, it stimulates growth in your brain. So,
and it's non-toxic, which is just like unheard of. Like, every pharmaceutical drug is toxic in some level.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I mean, even so, I mean, there's the psychological or spiritual ramifications of taking these substances. So yeah, there needs to be education, but man, I would love to be able to go to a trip house with a group of people. Like, you know, those escape rooms they do. I don't know if you guys have those in your areas. Fucking escape room. I want to do a psychedelic room with like 5 of my best friends and have some shaman take us on some crazy journey out there, you know, and come back and see what happens. But yeah, hopefully we can get to that point where it's available. And you know, there's advocacy for its responsible use.
Yeah. I feel like it'd be cool if there was like treatment centers like throughout different states that you could go to, but it wasn't treatment as much. It wasn't like to make money or profit, like, you know, pharmaceuticals are. You know, it's more just for like honest healing and honest a place for people to go and have a cathartic experience.
More like a facility that for people to utilize, you know, no agenda to it. It's just like
a cooperative,
a tool. Yeah.
Like a cooperative center with plenty of education and more than just psychedelics, you know, a place for people to have art or create art or
I think
open mic.
Yeah, right.
There should be more community centers in every town. Yeah. Like have places where people can meet. Like there's not a place where I can like go out in my town and just meet and play a board game with the friends, you know, like
go to the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which shows you what substances our societies endorse and really put up front, right? I mean, you want to fraternize or socialize, you go to a bar. Right?
That's our community centers.
Yeah. And then you're shouting over the music to make yourself heard, can't have a conversation. It's like
getting angry because nobody can hear you.
Yeah.
Ruminating with your own thoughts. Yeah.
The opposite of what we're looking for.
Right. Yeah. Which is nice. I like the bar setting. It's nice here and there, but it's also would be nice to have a community center. A nice somewhere you can just kind of like chill out, like almost like a lounge, I guess.
Yeah.
Somewhere between a lounge and a sangha, you know, an ashram.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're getting there though. I think it's ultimately up to all of us, you know, us, Ashley, anyone that's listening or watching to create that. We have the ability. I can create a community center if I want to in my city. If I really want to, it's up to us to create that world. And I think we are. There are people that are on that wavelength and are paving the way for that to be a reality. We're just, you know, taking a little bit of time. We still have a little bit of work to do collectively, but we are approaching a whole new paradigm, a whole new way to live our life. And it's a beautiful time to be alive. This is just the beginning. That's why we kind of like, it just seems so far away, but this is really a crazy time to be alive. This is just the start of a whole new lifestyle. Like people will look back in the future and be like, wow, well, hopefully they will. I don't know if this is just my idealism speaking though, but ideally they'll look back in the future and be like, wow, those people paved the way for me to be able to go to this community center or whatever it is, or legally access psilocybin or DMT or whatever it is, MDMA, so that I can live a better life. And this is it. This is the moment, man. Like it's crazy. Like when you really take in what this moment is, just us having this conversation right now, it's beautiful, man. It really is an amazing time. And it seems like the world's getting darker. It seems like the world's getting more controlled and intense, but I don't think it is, man. You just gotta shut off your phone, shut off the news, and really go within. You'll see like what's really happening in this world. You just have to disconnect a little bit.
Yeah.
Disconnect to reconnect.
Yeah, disconnect with the outside, connect with the inside, man. That's how you find the truth.
Well said, sir.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah. And I think COVID was a blessing in that way because it's a wake-up call for all of us to realize what's important. And what's important is not what's going on our phone or computer as much as it's going on with, you know, the neighbor's house or your brother's room or wherever, you know, people connecting with people in real life.
Yeah. True connection.
Right.
Not just like the base value, you know, like getting likes and clout. That's not real connection, man. That's the thing too, is we're building up this weird fake connection.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean, if you, I feel like if you got to brag about it, it ain't true. You know what I mean? Do you guys ever read that Einstein quote where he says, yes, it is true that I am the greatest genius the world has ever seen, and all of my theories are going to because it doesn't exist. Einstein never had to tell anybody he was a fucking genius. Everybody else said that about him. You know what I'm saying? So it's like social media going on and saying like, my life is so great. Look at this. And being a mother is the best. And I have this and the great. It's like, if it was true, you wouldn't have to tell people. You know what I mean? Like, or, you know, exactly. Where does that desire for advertisement comes from, right? Yeah, it is. I don't know, man. Attention, validation. I don't know. But validation. Those are all things that are inside of you. You don't need to go out there to get them. And I think just to circle back, Rory, you know, you realize that, you know, these substances are not going to give you what you're looking for. Brother, you got it already, man. That's why they're not giving it to you, because you already got it. Mm-hmm. And I know it's a mind fuck, but whatever you want, you already are that, my friend. And I think the work of every human being is to come to that place where you not only realize it, but realize it. You feel the truth of it, and you have felt it. So you know it's true, man. You got it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You got it. You don't need substances. But what I've realized is when you're high all the time, getting high is just another thing that you're doing. That's just happening. You know what I'm saying? I wake up high as fuck. I'm not doing any drugs. I am high all the time. So when I go out at night and I take a puff, that's just something that's happening. Doesn't change anything. I'm already high. No, I'm already high. It's just getting me a little higher.
Yeah, a little different. But, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it speaks to like the efficacy of these drugs. Like if we use them all the time, it's not as profound.
No, absolutely not. No, exactly. Yeah. So, and there's ways to get much higher without any substance. So, so drugs, no drugs. Like I have friends who are, in AA and they believe that they must be sober for all times and they'll never touch alcohol again. And I respect that and I appreciate that. But to me, it's like, you're not addressing the underlying issue. If addiction is the result of disconnection or trauma, and all you're doing is I'm never touching alcohol again, you're not dealing with the trauma or the disconnection. You're just avoiding it. It's just another avoidance strategy. So, I commend you because you realize that obviously the opiates were a no-go for you, but you haven't shut the door on everything else, and nor should you, because there might be other things that are life-enhancing for you that make your life better and that help you enjoy things even more than you already enjoy them, right?
Right. It's a journey. You find out, but yeah, the opiates for me are just no. I can't, they just shut you off so quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
Wow.
We'll probably wrap it up at that.
Yeah.
It's a journey, man. It's a wonderful journey. Ups and downs though. That's the thing. You got to realize it's all ups and downs. But recognize that it's all temporary. I think that's what we can kind of get from this whole thing. That's what it is. This is a story. This is a journey we're living that we're currently documenting. Literally documenting. And
very nice.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't want to be anybody else. That's what I always say. I wouldn't want to be alive in a different time. It's a wonderful time, even though, we all have our struggles. I have my struggles as well. I try to embrace it. I'm just like, you know what? Even though I have that struggle, whatever's going on in my head, I still wouldn't want to not exist. I'd rather feel something than nothing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. I just gotta plug the Bhagavad Gita. If you guys haven't read it, if you guys don't know about it, you guys gotta check that book out, man.
Yeah.
It's the remedy for me. I'm telling you.
It's on the bookshelf over there.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, and the Upanishads, but the Gita, man, just condenses it. Chapter 4 of the Gita. Read chapter 4.
I'm going to go read that right after this.
It will break it down for you in such a clear way, man. Karma yoga. It's a game changer. I mean, for me personally, following some of the principles in this book have helped me turn things that used to depress me and make me angry into literal spiritual exercises. Like answering emails becomes a spiritual exercise.
Anything is in the right perspective, man.
100%. And that's what this book really teaches you, is that it's all about the spirit in which you do things. It doesn't matter what you do. It's how you're doing it in here and in here. And yeah, man. Anyways, I just wanted to plug that because for me, the art of living, I learned it from these people who have been dead for thousands of years. Yeah. And I swear to God, there's like basically 3 books for me and they lay it all down. And it's like, as long as I stick to this, I got no issues.
It's meditations, the Bhagavad Gita, and what's the other one?
The Tao, baby. I'm reading the Tao and the Gita at the same time because they're saying the same thing, man. There's passages where it's like, oh shit, through selfless action, attain fulfillment. And then you turn to the Gita and it's like the same goddamn message. It's just, it's all about realizing that the ego it doesn't exist. So if you don't have an ego, you don't really have problems. You know what I mean? Or if the ego is subservient to the higher self, then there are no issues. Yeah. It becomes a servant and a faithful helper. But anyway, just wanted to plug those books. But I also think it's important for people to find their own books, right? Whether it's the Bible or the Dhammapada or whatever it is that resonates with you, because they're all saying the same stuff.
Yep.
Dude, so, the Denial of Death by Ernest Becker is the most important book I've ever read.
Really?
It's unbelievable. I mean, there's some parts of it where it's like he was like into psychoanalysis, so it goes too far into Freud in some ways, and like the sexual ideas.
Yeah.
But the part about like he talks about how he uses Kierkegaard a lot, and he talks about how when you start to feel your existential anxiety, that's the school of anxiety. That's like you go into this school and you're taught through your anxiety. So instead of avoiding it, let it in and learn from it. And yeah, I mean, it's really all the same stuff in different ways, but whatever resonates with you, that's your stuff, man.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
The way is the way is the way.
Yeah. Turtles all the way down.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks guys for coming on here. I think this was an amazing talk. We should definitely do this again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to do it in person.
Yeah.
For sure. That'd be great.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, man.
Someday.
We're getting close. Yeah, we're getting
there.
close. More vaccines.
Yeah.
We should make this a regular thing though, because I love talking to you guys, and
Yeah.
it's about that connection, man. And I feel really connected to you guys.
Yeah.
Never even met you in person, but I feel really connected, and that's something we got to cultivate.
Yeah. I'm really grateful to, sit here and talk with you guys. This is awesome.
Same.
I just went through something like pretty traumatic like a couple weeks ago. So like I'm still a little timid and like still trying to work through it all, but this is great. This is super nice.
Thanks for opening up about that stuff. Yeah, man. I mean, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but I just, I care about you and I want to see how you're doing. And, when you mentioned relapse, I was like, I kind of want to know. So I'm going to ask.
Of course.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, that's what we talk about is like being open and vulnerable is how you deal with these things.
I mean, that's what our podcast was all about. And
yeah.
And so being open and talking about it is really a good solution for me.
Yeah. It's therapeutic.
Yeah, I'm happy to meet with you guys in any combination once a month. Just let me know what day. We'll make it a standing, invitation. I will be here once a month, and whoever shows up. I'm 100% in on that.
That's a great idea.
Little coffee table room or coffee room.
Yeah, man.
Thing.
We can record it. We don't have to record it. We can do whatever we want, whatever you guys want. I'm just down to connect with you guys, on a regular. So let's make it happen.
Sounds good, man.
Let's do it.
All right.
Awesome, boys. Thanks a lot, man. Great Saturday morning. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
For this.
Yeah, I'm feeling great.
Yes.
Same. I'm going to go out.
Have a good weekend, guys.
Yeah. Cheers, brothers.
Enjoy your party, Gary.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Gonna go
man.
get buck wild.
Have a good one, guys.
See you later.
Later.